Hello, everyone, and welcome to another MGA webinar. Today we have with us GOffee. Sorry, Vincent, is it GOffee?
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome. GOffee CEO Vincent Meyer. I should have remembered to ask you that before we started. Who will be providing us with a deep dive in retargeting for apps. Vincent has worked on retargeting solutions for 10 years and has a deep understanding of technologies and inefficiencies in mobile video display and search. Thank you for being here, Vincent. I will turn things over to you.
Thanks, Casey. I'm very happy to be here and again, working with another good, hopefully, episode of content that you guys always provide. Hello, everyone. I'm the CEO of GOffee. We're a mobile application that allows people to order their coffee online and get it delivered. But before doing all of this craziness, as Casey mentioned, spent about 10 years primarily studying on the webside of things, developing a retargeting solution. As you can tell from the accent, actually the technology was coming from France, and then I brought it over to the US. Tell me this situation sounds familiar. You go and browsing for a pair of shoes on an e-commerce website, and that pair of sneakers is then following you around for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Well, we were the one who kind of, democratized this idea and tried to, bring it in the beginning first into e-commerce. As the world of users and web change, we started to apply that into mobile. And so this whole concept of retargeting is something that I've been seeing evolve. And I wanted to go with you across a couple of definitions, understanding a little bit more how strict you should be when you set up a campaign and how you should be judging your retargeting efforts. Then I want to go a little bit into details into the setting up a campaigns, what are the things that you need to make sure it's successful. And then a couple of practical example on, where to go and run those campaigns, best practices in terms of messaging and the type of format that we recommend. So let's dive in a little bit. So I'm a little bit of a stickler for this one, maybe because English is not my first language, but I always thought it's important to clarify the definition of retargeting. Specifically, as I mentioned, for somebody like me who's seen the retargeting as a product of the mobile of web, the experience over there was very simple. We were trying to track user behavior on a website, and based on what the user had seen or engaged on the website, find him again on the internet and recommending to come back and complete the action he didn't took on the website. When the world of apps got, set up, I think a lot of the companies tried to take over the best practices that we were seeing for the web and consider that, a web property, a website would be the same thing in a mobile application. But there was one big difference, which is the difference of a web website and an application is you have to go and install it. So what quickly got translated as retargeting in the world of apps was a concept of reinstall, which is the users who have installed your app but decided to remove it from his device should be someone that you should go after, which I have nothing against, but if you think about it, the action of installing an application is very different than the concept or primary concept of retargeting, which is generating actual paid actions. And then it got also lumped on with another concept of the mobile application, which is a re-engagement. And re-engagement is looking at users that haven't done something into application for a while, as simple as reopening the app or checking out the content, interacting with the content inside the app. And so the fact that all of those groups and all those definitions got mixed generated a little bit of confusion, I think, for a lot of the app developer community, specifically when you come into measuring the effectiveness of your retargeting campaigns. So without further ado, let's agree into, I'll call it my view of the definition of retargeting. I'm sure there's some of you that will disagree with me, and it's great. But I think you guys can decide one of the three, but here's the one I'll be taking for this webinar. The idea of a retargeting campaign is to drive tactics and to leverage tactics to perform a revenue-generated action inside your application. In this example, I'm going to focus primarily on people who have installed the app already on your device. And why it's important to look at this is if you think about people that have installed an application, then uninstall it, your pool of users is going to be very big. But the hurdle of them coming back and reinstalling the application might be a little higher. And even if they install the app, your guarantee of a conversions or revenue action is much more difficult to achieve than someone who at least already have the application installed on his phone, but might be not engaging with your content for a little while. So once we have agreed on the premises of the definition of the campaign, now I want to go a little bit into how you want to look into setting up and judging your retargeting campaign. And I like to be very, very blunt about this. A retargeting campaign has to be your best performing marketing campaigns. If it's not, something is either misjudged or set up. But if you think about it, you're talking about speaking with the users have the most potential in your palette of users, and so you want to make sure that you're putting probably the hardest goals or the goals the highest values toward that campaign. So one thing that I like to do, and obviously speaking to all of you, there's going to be like people with different type of mobile applications. I'll try to cover a couple of examples in a few seconds, but what I like to have is an agreement, when we're looking into those retargeting campaigns, to say, okay, what is the most valuable action inside your mobile application? If you think for a second, take our example for GOffee, our mobile application, the most valuable action is to order a coffee. And so that action actually has a dollar sign associated with it because we're direct to consumer and direct transactions. I worked with mobile games where we were considering the most valuable action as a step inside the game's progression. We knew that if the users had played for at least 10 levels, it means that he had engaged with a certain amount of time from promotions, or he had seen a certain amount of ads, which in our modeling would mean that that user generated a certain amount of dollars. If you're a subscription app, obviously your most valuable actions is for users to go and subscribe. So just put in your head for the rest of the presentation this idea, this most valuable action for your mobile application that you think would play, and kind of follow the presentation with that knowledge in mind. And the second thing is getting into understanding the funnel or the action that the users is going to have to take to go to that valuable actions. Over there, I wanted to take a couple of examples, like I mentioned. There's a ton of different funnels, but I tried to take probably the top 3 funnels that I could think of, or for what I've seen in the data, people who are using the most of retargeting as a strategy. And in the case, for example, of a freemium app, where the idea is you want to, for lack of a better term, bait the users to discover your content and get access to all of it for free, but then creating a locking experience where they have to go and move to subscriptions. The funnel for users is obviously to go and preview your content, being able to engage with all of it, which is a first step of an actions. Then you want to have the user engage with the first locking mechanism, which is going to be, a prompt to say, you have 3 more days to enjoy this content. After that, you have to go and subscribe. Then you have what I call the value description phase, where users keeps being either presented with a reason to upgrade it to unlock a subscriptions, or keeps getting frustrated because he's not allowed to move on to a certain point because he has to go and subscribe. And then we get into this most valuable action, which is users actually subscribes. So when you think about that funnel, when seeing that angle, it's going to be interesting to measure the points in your retargeting campaigns to figure out where are you going to drive the user back in that funnel. Do you want to get him back to that preview setup, or in this case, for me, the key thing would be to bring it back to the user limits, so he's reminded about the content, but also the benefits of unlocking the subscriptions. In the second example, which is I would expect a big part of who is connected today. We're developing a content mobile game where we want people to advance into the game, get big benefits by doing an in-app purchase. So I guess it's for me in my mind, it's a little bit similar to the example number one, where we have a user, the user will go and discover the mechanics of the games, and then suddenly discover that there is a way to improve dramatically his experience with the payments. That said, what everybody's seen, it's very rare to have that users making that jump, but it's important to note at which stage of the game that user usually gets presented with that element of information, which would be, in my point, the value. So the users usually end up keep playing, but discover that if he were to unlock a purchase, it would drastically improve his experience. And then you have, the in-app purchase where the user clearly understood the value of it. And so again, retargeting strategies, getting into the point of value, or actually driving directly to the in-app purchase with an element of reward or discounts could actually allow you to increase your performance of your retargeting campaign. And then the last one, which is a model that I spent most of my time in, quite honestly, on the development side and the marketing side, was to leverage mechanics of games that had both in-app purchase and ad-based monetizations. And this is the example that I was talking about a few minutes ago, where the actions of your users are, each of them generates some type of revenue with an ad-based model. It's a couple of cents for every banner that the user sees, engagement that you have him with, rewarded videos. Each of those actions has a dollar and cent associated with, but usually you want to group them as a certain number because the value of those actions are quite small. So over here, it's much more about understanding what are the steps in your game that are going to mean that the users have generated enough actions that the total should be a value of 40 cents, 50 cents. And that becomes as your most valuable actions. So you now have a situation where instead of being redirecting users to one specific place in your app, you want to bring him into his own funnel when he's going to do 5 little actions that are going to be generating revenue as themselves. And all of those 5 actions together would give you a dollar amount. So once we've kind of understood those different funnels and where we think it would be interesting to go and redirect your users with your targeting campaigns, you want to go and figure out how to set up your campaigns. The first thing, and I know you guys probably heard it 100 times, but I can't highlight this high enough. It was very important in the web, and it's even more important now inside the world of apps. You want to have a one true view of your campaigns, of your results. You want to figure out one tracking partner, and it's great to be here and not being with the vendors. I usually try to jump in and explain that this is the best. I wouldn't be able to tell you if there is one that is the best, but you have to agree with your team. Anyone that is going to go and measure your marketing campaigns or look at your result for that marketing campaigns, I agree that there's going to be one truth, and you find a system that allows you to go and see this in one view. And if you think the numbers might be flawed, just write down from the beginning the potential discrepancy you might see in click because of time zone, because of different attribution method that some vendors might want to pull. You just want to make sure that you have one view and you agree that when you start your retargeting campaign, those metrics are being held to. Because retargeting touch a lot of people in your flow. And so you want to make sure that those users and the way you're looking at the results is at least consistent through your campaigns. Second, it's a deep linking. I'm sure you guys all have now a good solution in place. It's getting better and better. But what it means, or at least the reason why I wanted to put it out there, is I've seen too many times on experiences where users is offered a great retargeting message, a great incentive to come back into the game or shop at a specific moment to benefit a specific discount. And the user just go and get redirected right into the home page instead of being redirected in the moment in the MVA locations. And that kills your whole campaign. From a user perspective, it's very frustrating. From a performance, you're going to see a huge drop. And it's a very simple thing to fix. It's just making sure that when you work with your retargeting partner or when you set up your campaign, you have those deep linking strategies already set up. Three, I think everybody always mention fraud in general, but I think for whatever reason, it's always been a big thing with retargeting, primarily in my mind, because it comes with a world of money. So every time you try to drive sales, people feel that there's maybe a little bit more incentive to generate fraud. I've never seen data that shows that it's true, but I want to mention it here. I think we have enough tools now. I think the attribution providers provide great reports on tracking the situation. But I just think it's something that you need to be looking into. And I would focus primarily, obviously, on the click validations, just looking at any time lapse that you might have between clicks and actions. There's always the excuse of a slow internet connection, but let's be honest, that's becoming less and less relevant. So you can quickly have a report on a daily, weekly basis showing you any type of potential challenge into the information. And when we look into some of the channels I recommend you guys spend your time on, you'll see that there'll be some easy way to make sure that everything is fine. And then the last piece is on the setup is making sure that you have an audience in mind and you group those users that are going to be engaged with your message in a couple of dynamic groups. In my mind, similar to the funnel, you want to determine certain characteristic of the people that are going to be exposed to your retargeting message. I'll take again our example of people who order a coffee from us, but we haven't seen an order from them in 7 days. And we're going to have a very different message than someone that ordered a coffee 2 days ago, but haven't reordered for his usual coffee. If you're working for mobile games, somebody that has just participated in a challenge for like 7 days in a row, and somebody's been off for more than 4 days, something you're going to want to have a very specific message. If you have a very simple, subscription message, and you feel like the user is not being engaging with the content as well, you want obviously to have a different promotion for that users versus a person that is like literally 1 day away of ending his free trial. So those segments, those conditions are very important because they're going to allow you to think about the messaging that you're going to put in front of them, and also is going to allow you to follow your user through their funnel journey, meaning that it's important to have those segments, to keep the segment dynamic, because one user is going to move from one step to the other. So you want to make sure that you keep the conditions of your group flexible so you can track users going down the funnel. Then once you have set up all those rules, you have to decide where you want to go and run your campaign. Here's something that I always like to highlight, and I'll go a bit more in detail in a second, but mobile web, in my opinion, is one of the usually most forgotten channels, or at least the less looked at from people doing retargeting campaigns. You're going to say it's because I come from the web that I'm looking into this, but primarily it's because I see how the browsers have evolved and have helped push mobile application adoptions. And so I think finding good inventory on mobile web and relatively properly priced is way easier than just trying to doing purely inside the world of apps. So in terms of channels, hopefully I can't hear you guys, but I hope some of you guys are going to scream on my number 1 point, which is stay away from social media for your retargeting campaigns. It sounds counterintuitive, but I'm sure all of you have seen, you guys are already spending a lot of money on primarily user acquisition. So brand new users, trying to leverage data that you have across those social media networks to acquire brand new users. Running a retargeting campaign is just going to do 2 things. One is going to confuse you and group your users in same buckets. You're going to think that your overall channel in Facebook is doing very well when you're going to realize that there's actually users that are retargeting users and new users or new ad downloads. And two is going to drive your price up. You're trying to go and compete for space where people are buying users based on very specific and expensive data points versus you leveraging your own data. So leverage your own data, all you know about the users on a channel that is not going to overcharge you for selling their placements with targeting capabilities associated with that. And that's where the social media will go and drive your campaign. Two, as I mentioned, one place I like to do is to spend some time on mobile web. Again, the inventory over there is pretty big. If you have a good in-app or deep linking strategy, you should be able to find some good success. There's also some very good and powerful in-app networks. People have been looking at them in different ways. I think what I've found is if you're able to have an open conversation with them and require some type of transparencies to understand where your campaigns are running, you're very quickly able to measure the quality of the networks and the quality of the results. This is what I love about retargeting. It's about dollar and cents. It's not about like perceptions or where you think your ad should go. Is finding where the user is and showing him with the most relevant ad that is going to motivate him to go and come back to your property. So, in-app is obviously something that is very well developed. And so I would encourage you to have as many conversations as you can. So you can understand what the networks are composed of, which type of apps do they use, which type of placements, which is a little bit of a segue into the last piece is, historically, retargeting has been a banner story, primarily because it was a very cheap and efficient way to go and buy advertisement and placements. I think there's a lot to be said about leveraging more video, because you have to remember that you're trying to convey a very specific proposition to your users. And so being able to leverage your video creative, reminding the users about the environment is going to go back in, explaining the actions you want the user to do, explaining why the subscription is a valuable payment that the user should do. Video is a great and powerful tool. Versus a banner is obviously a very simple and click message. Yes, you'll have the button click now, and you'll have to say, subscribe now, but you haven't given them enough to really reinforce your proposition. So I think, I would really encourage you to go and focus on creating some type of a mixed video and banner creative where you focus on the features that you want to highlight on for your users, trying to show them the benefits of, if it's your game, what is going to be the level of engagement they can do. If it's a news app, making sure you show the content that they're going to be able to unlock. In our cases, we're trying to do a rich video about the coffees and the taste that they could have, and then tell them, by the way, if you click now, you're going to be able to redeem a latte for $3.50 instead of $4.50. So you can have this combination of video and banners, and it's very effective, and you'll see your engagement, your click-through rate, but more than that, the conversion rate be way more successful than just banner. And finally, it's a little thing that I like to do, again, is when we're looking into retargeting, a lot of the call to actions include some type of promotion, discounts, added values for the users. And if it's the case, obviously there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually it's a proven method and works well. I just think, to be fair to the way you're looking at the channel, you should include that cost as part of your return on investment calculation, because you're going to have been giving away a transaction with a little bit of a media cost, obviously running a retargeting campaign, but plus a specific discount, which is going to be lowering your overall revenue from that transactions. It's a good practice to go and add. It keeps everybody honest, and it will also allow you to show that the value of those campaigns, even with all those costs associated, the media, the creative, and the promotion, is still one of your most performant channel. So as a quick recap, like I mentioned earlier on, agree on a definition when you're starting to look at retargeting. Again, I have nothing against somebody doing a purely reinstall campaigns. The volume is going to be very big. You're going to be able to target a lot of users, but the metrics are going to be very different and you focus on re-engagement. So agree on that definition with your partners if you decide to run this through retargeting solutions, or if you decide to run your campaign by yourself, make sure you're excluding instead of mixing those two groups together. Users that already have your app but are not engaged versus people who have uninstalled your app. It would really clarify your goals and your success of your campaign. 2, just be very specific and exigent, making sure that you really put some high targets against your retargeting campaign. If you execute well, if you target the proper groups, those dynamic groups that we mentioned, and you focus on the most valuable actions, you should see highly positive, outright positive campaigns. And it shouldn't be trying to go and expand into a larger scale. It's a proper targeting, it's a proper messaging at the right time, and you'll generate a very high return. 3, never forget about looking at all those results into the same loop day after day. Meet with your team, meet with your management team if they're going to want to look into specifically that campaign, to make sure they're going to be okay with that view, with those tools, so you don't have to go and scramble to create multiple results once you're live. And then 3, mobile web if you can. If it's something you haven't explored, definitely do it. With deep linking strategy, you'll see amazing results, as well as leveraging as much as you can videos mixed with banner for call to action. That's it. A couple of questions if you guys have. I think you have one from the audience, Casey.
Yes, we do. So thank you, anonymous attendee, for submitting a question. We hope others will as well. The first question is, building hundreds of video creatives becomes a challenge when we are looking at multiple products and categories. Do you think generic videos are effective for retargeting?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm glad that somebody picked up on that. That's exactly the way I would do it. I would focus on one generic videos, but leverage the last 5 to 10 seconds with either a static banner or a dynamic banner highlighting the specific elements that you want to push to that group of users. So take an example again, let's say we're with the New York Times and you want to highlight, obviously the generic video is going to be about all the quality content that you might have from the video, from the interviews, from the articles. But if you have a user that is just tried the service for 3 days and you want to make sure you're driving into the subscriptions, you want to do the generic videos, and for the last 5 seconds, having a banner that focus about make sure you have those news on your inbox every day if you subscribe as a users. So I completely agree that I'm not expecting you to spend millions into dynamic video creative, but I think it's about the end of the video and the call to action at the end that makes it very unique.
Awesome, thank you. Gerardo asks, what is the ideal length for a retargeting video in matter of seconds?
Yep, good question as well. There's been a ton of debates on the attention span lately about users. It's primarily, to be quite honest, going to depends on the network you're going to be able to target things on. My recommendation is always 15 seconds because that's usually the one that is the most available, not because it's the most performant, but it's the one who's the most available. 30 seconds usually get into the channel that we were discussing before, where the content needs to be a little bit more developed, and so the cost can go a little higher. But I would highly recommend to check out 15-second videos, 10 seconds of the generic content, like I said, the last 5 seconds focusing on the call to action.
Awesome, thank you. We don't have any questions at the moment. If anyone does still have any questions, please send them along. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks to those who have submitted questions so far. I have a question myself, and I hope I didn't miss something while I was typing in the chat, but I don't recall hearing much about email as a channel for retargeting. So I'm just wondering, what is the productiveness of using email as a channel?
Yeah, that's a very good one. It's one that I consider I've removed it on purpose, but it's one that I've seen very few improvement in the past years, or about using email and retargeting. Sadly, for whatever reason, the connection between usually your user CRM and the fact that you can actually have a capability to send them email is relatively poor. But if you have that set up, I think it's a really powerful statement. And I would reuse again my example about video there. You have now a chance to really present the content that you want to highlight for that user. And so more than just focusing on email that are going to be overly generic, just focus on a creative that is going to highlight the specific event you want, the specific actions you want the users to do, and how far along he is from that actions. Email is a very powerful tool. It's one of the cheapest one, quite honestly, but you just have to do the integration of your segments with your email provider and making sure those campaigns are set up properly, and then spend a little bit more time on the creative to be more precise than generic.
Awesome, thank you. And I don't see any more questions, and it looks like we're about out of time. So Vincent, I want to thank you for sharing your insights with all of us. For those of you who are looking for more relevant insights, Vincent will also be speaking at MGS GVC 3.0 this February 10th, I believe. The show takes place February 10th and 11th. He'll be speaking on the 10th. That show will have a focus on marketing, monetization, CRM and LTV, as well as app and business development and operations. And right now, publishers can sign up for all of our 2021 shows at once for free with just a single sign-on form. So if that's of interest to you, please go ahead and head over to mobilegrowthassociation.com/events and click on free 2021 events registration. Vincent, thank you so much for speaking with us today, and we will see you at the show in February, and we hope we see all the rest of you there too.
Thank you so much. Have a good one today.
Bye.
Bye.